Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all. First and foremost, thanks to Annalise and to Graham and the whole ARPAS team for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Really looking forward to it. We will skip through these slides, and I know that there'll be a few questions at the end, so we'll get involved with those as quickly as we can. That being said, quick introduction for those of you that may not know who I am. My name's Kev Woolsey. I'm the head of ARPAS at the CAA, focusing on applications and oversight. And I'm joined by Callum today, who is the ARPAS sector lead for applications. The way we'll run this today is we'll go through a few slides. Callum will join to talk about atypical air environment. I got a clicker. Yeah. Excellent. I'm not. Yeah. Learning quickly. Okay, so the scope there will be some overlap. Thank you to Jenny for setting me up with the future of flight slides. There may be a little bit of overlap, but actually it's a good thing, because I think what it can do is illustrate the centrality of the future of flight. And although it may be something that which may feel like it's at a high level, I think it affects everybody in the room. I'll also talk about the DISCO, the digitization of specific category operations. The specific category of operations, Callum will then come up and talk about the atypical air environment. Then we'll have a conclusion, then we'll get involved with your questions. Okay, future of flight. I'm not going to dwell on too many of these slides because I appreciate that Jenny's done a superb job at talking all about that. But you can see there's a repeat there of the vision of the future of flight and the strategic outcomes. And as Jenny has already mentioned, the ones that are most relevant to my team are strategic operation outcome number 1 and number 3, which is to do with the non-segregated airspace and the integrated airspace milestones of 2024 and 2027. We've already talked about the future of flight industry group as well, and hopefully you can begin to see now that the CAA and DFT for once perhaps are working hand in glove towards a common objective, which is a good thing. So the future of flight programme, one of the main points I want to make to the audience really is the fact that this is a significant endeavour, and once again Jenny's done an excellent job of describing the length and breadth of that, and this slide is intended to perhaps do more of the same and to identify some of the groups and plans that are involved with it. The point I'd like to make about this is that it is a large programme. The high-level strategy, which I think is probably worth just expanding on a little bit more to build on what's already been said about future of flight, is the demonstrate, scale and sustain model. So when you look at the strategic objectives that we've discussed thus far, the whole idea, whether you're talking about AEM or UAS, is that you begin at the demonstrate level of size, and then you move through a scale and then into the sustain piece. And there are a few things which begin to veer and haul as you look down that slide as you progress through those 3 stages. So we're at the demonstrate stage by and large for the UAS objectives at the moment. This context overview is to help continue the point I made a moment ago about the size and complexity of this programme. There are a number of stakeholders involved, and you can see that on the screen there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see that there is a kind of a triad of interest, if you will, between the CAA, the industry, and the government, which is represented there. And there's a lot of arrows going in quite a few different directions. So the point of this slide is the contextual overview is that future of flight is not a trivial undertaking. It's very complex. Looking a little bit more towards what's going on in the CAA, you're probably aware that there was an organisational design that landed at the beginning of this year, and I thought perhaps it would be worth just showing the outcome of that. When I first of all joined the ARPAS unit in 2018, which is the same week that the Gatwick incident took place, which was an interesting first week at work, the team was very small. And what has happened there, I think it's probably fair enough to say that there was most of the boxes on that screen did not exist in 2018. And certainly as the dust has begun to settle following the organisational design, you can see at the top there, and I appreciate it's a little bit of an eye test perhaps for those at the back, the head of future safety and innovation is Sophie O'Sullivan, who was previously head of the ARPAS unit. She now presides over an organisation which you can see described there, which encompasses about 100 people. Mine is the area on the left-hand side, and the team that I take care of at the moment, the applications and oversight side of things, amounts to about 16 people, including myself. As you work across from left to right, the SARG operations and programs head is Eva Gowers, and it's to her that we can look for, a lot of the progress we've made in adopting a program mindset and a program approach to what we've talked about so far. FS&I policy is James. He was, up until this appointment, where he was obviously successful in applying for this role, was the ARPAS policy manager. Now his role stretches across the entirety of FS&I, which includes ARPAS and also D&C in terms of policy. Design and certification with Gary, we're towards the right-hand side of the screen there, encompasses a pre-existing team which got absorbed into FS and I. And finally, we have technical strategy, which is a new area, which is perhaps a slightly more forward-leaning component of what FS&I do. So Ed Clay, who's recently joined the team from industry, he'll be looking slightly more forward into the future and ensuring that the applications that arrive at my team on the left-hand side of this arrive in the best possible shape and with the best possible chances of achieving the operational authorization that they're after. So between 2018 and today, where I joined a team which was, off the top of my head, about 10 to 15 people strong, you're now looking at an organization which is about 100 people. And the direction of travel within SARG is much clearer. And I'm hoping that perhaps as the regulator community professionalizes itself, I can convince you today in some small measure that the CAA is professionalizing itself towards what it is that we want to achieve. And I think that Jenny and I are probably united on that front in terms of the future of flight program and the setup of FS&I within the CAA. The other half of SARG is safety operations. So that is something which includes the capability areas that you might be more familiar with, like flight ops, GA, and that kind of thing. Okay, let's talk about the DISCO. So the digitization of applications in the specific category of operations. This is a program which is, or a project which is probably fair to say the most important one that I'm interested in. And there's a few numbers on the screen there that you may have seen from previous presentations, the PwC numbers. And as you know, Graham has said, whether you believe those numbers exactly, they're all going up. And then you can look at the numbers of specific category authorizations through the years, through the financial years, and then the open category in terms of the active flyer IDs and the operator IDs as well. So you can see that the scores on the doors at the moment is that operational authorizations wise, there are 3,646. The last data point there in 22-23. And then the flyer IDs and operator IDs, 336,000 flyer IDs and 225,000 operator IDs. Now, I imagine that one of the questions that's probably being typed out now, so I'll save you the trouble, is in 2021, there seemed to be an awful lot more operational authorizations. Why is that, Kev? Well, there's no way for us to actually prove this, but the theory is that the introduction of the new regulations removing the commercial trigger meant that there wasn't necessarily a need for people to apply for operational authorizations because we moved away from the PIFCO. And also there was a realization that perhaps PDRE 01 was fine for commercial operations. So there was no need for there to be such a need to apply. Sorry, I apologize. There was the ability to conduct commercial operations in the open category. So there's not such a need to apply for an operational authorization of any shape. And I know that you'll probably want to talk about that. So the benefits of the DISCO. Jenny's been good enough to tell us about some of the broader benefits to society in the big map. Let's look at things in a slightly smaller map and focus perhaps more on the specific category in the DISCO project. Better customer experience. We have started on the 3rd of April with the digitisation of PDRA 01 applications. It's gone from an average of 20 days to 1 day to achieve a PDRA 01 authorisation via a declarative process on a digital platform. So that in itself, I hope you'd agree, would be an improvement and a step in the right direction. There are plenty of other benefits which won't necessarily go through all of them, but perhaps I've mentioned reduced timescales, reduced workload. And this is the beginning, of course, of what we will be doing in the future with OSC-based applications as well. Part of the exercise that we're going through here by using PDRA 01, which is our most popular. On the previous slide, you know, there are, of those operational authorizations, 3,500 of them are PDRA 01, so the vast majority are of that. It's a good place to start, relatively simple. We can prove the digital platform, then go forward with the program to develop it into something which can cope with an OSC-based application, which I'll talk about in a minute. Reduce timescales, reduce workload, and it also means that we're going to move into an area where we're going to be doing some more sampling of PDRA 01 holders. So it's a declarative process, but there will be an uptick in the amount of times that we will be looking to the community, the PDRA 01 holders, to say, please show us your documents. Key milestones. Okay, so there are a number of some really important milestones within the DISCO project. So this is quite a good slide to take a picture of if you want. We will share these slides afterwards, by the way, if you want those. We've already talked about the blue one on the left-hand side, the PDRA 01 go live. So the minimum viable product, which is what the MVP stands for there, is we've passed that milestone already. The next is going to be in Q2 of this year, and that's a remote pilot competency scheme. Will go live, and there's been some consultation and some excellent work from our friends in ARPAS FS&I policy to develop that. Following that quite quickly towards the second half of this year is the SORA and the flight worthiness scheme. So as you'll all know, the RAE scheme at the moment delivers pilot competency recommendations to the CAA. And the idea is, with an RAE focusing on flight worthiness, is an organisation which can provide similar types of recommendations to the CAA in terms of the assurance and technical insurance of the aircraft. And we deliberately use the term flight worthiness, not airworthiness, because it's not quite the same thing. It's kind of like a Diet Coke to Coke relationship, if I can use that analogy there. That being said, RAEs that would specialise in flight worthiness would be quite different organisations, we feel, to the RAEs that exist now for pilot competency. So it's worth recognising that we're not seeing there being a direct read across, simple expansion. Some might be able to do it, but it's quite a difficult, it's quite a different skill set that's required for that RAEs. And then finally, I've mentioned this, I think, perhaps in passing, but I'll re-emphasise it again towards the beginning of 2025. All of those milestones come together and converge to provide a SORA-based applications on the digital platform that we launched in April and will develop through the course of the year and prove that. So that is, I think, probably the one of the more important slides that you'll see today, and perhaps will resonate most with you. And happy to take any further questions should you have them at the end. Let's talk a little bit more about the specific category. Perhaps in the same flavour of intent of my slides about the Future of Flight programme, which gives you an idea of the complexity of the undertaking that we're doing. Don't worry about the detail on this slide. It's just a continuation of that point. But I'll point out a couple of things that are worth perhaps recognising for you. You can see on the left-hand side the demonstrate, scale, sustain continuum that I mentioned in a previous slide with some blue boxes at the top. You've obviously got the years across the top. And then for the sake of brevity, and thanks to you, Jenny, you've mentioned these things already, I can point out strategic objective number 1 and the activities involved with that. And then strategic objective number 3 down the middle in the scale part of the slide, and then the various milestones that are associated with that. When you look at this is just one bit of things, and when you look at the wider Future of Flight programme, as Jenny said, there are millions of things that you can put on there. And actually, I think we've put several hundred milestones associated with all of this. The point of this is just to show you how much of a program mindset the CAA is adopting effectively on this. And thanks to the, I think it was 15 million, maybe even a little bit more, that the DFT have kindly sent in our direction earlier this year, we can do this properly. And when you speak to the head of SARG operations and programs, Eva, who was on the slide earlier, the organogram that I spoke about, she very much is a force multiplier in making us work more effectively and in this program mindset, which is a far cry, dare I say, from when I first of all joined the unit in 2018, in a good way. Okay, so this is another quite useful slide. It's there to perhaps just mention that some of the program work streams. I know it'll be a bit of a struggle to see some of those, but I've kind of mentioned some of them already. I think the useful part of this is the picture on the right, which talks about the kind of the mental image that is useful to understand how scalable BVLOS operations are made possible. And you build it on the foundation of the DMARS, the Drone and Model Aircraft Registration Education Service, the technical platform that I've talked about that we've begun to use since we launched the PDA 01 on the 3rd of April. And then there are 4 pillars, which I think I can probably attribute to you, Callum, thinking of these first. Modest as always. So the SORA, the flight worthiness, the remote pilot competency, and then you'll recognise those as the milestones on the other slide with the circles and the coloured lines that joined them up. The only other one that I haven't mentioned is the 4th pillar, which is on the right there, which is about airspace integration. And I was talking to people in the lobby about our work with other parts of the CAA, notably AAA, and are we doing it? The answer is yes, and that's part and parcel of the airspace integration pillar. But once again, as I was speaking to people before I came in here this afternoon, I have got used to a transition of work away from the likes of me. As I said, I think to you, Tony, in the lobby, I have gone through a period whereby someone says ARPAS and it immediately becomes my job. And actually, what is more true to say is that when it comes to airspace integration, it is a job that is shared across the CAA more effectively now. The same is also true with our work with flight operations, with dangerous goods, and the like. So the program mindset and the sharing of responsibility is more effective than it was, and airspace integration is a good example of that. Okay, there's a lot on this slide. I don't think we'll go through all of that. It's just really to show you, as I've highlighted in the yellow part at the top, what goes on in the demonstration phase. And then we'll scamper across to what needs to be done for the scale side of things as well. The point of these slides is just to show you that there's a lot of things going on. And I think at that stage of the game, I'll take a quick break and you have a change of voice. I will be back for conclusion and questions at the end, but I'll hand across to Callum, who's going to talk about the atypical air environment.
Cheers, Kev. You've all gone to great effort to be here, so I'm going to reward you with the full version of me because I don't like stand behind plinths. Yeah, there's going to be a bit of a contrast here. We've had lots of detail on lots of slides. You're going to see how my brain works. Not there. Lots of detail. This is Callum's. There you go. That's kind of my brain. Keep it simple. I want to talk a little bit about BVLOS, just a little bit about my role. I've recently moved into a new post of the ARPAS sector lead for applications. So the team that manage applications, the trick's in the name, really. I lead that team. I think it's useful, given that I'm sort of at the coal face of applications, that you kind of understand a bit about my background, where I've come from. Lots of sort of industry sort of connections and, dare I say, friends in the room. So I think a lot of you know me. I started from the beginning an awful long time ago, founding a commercial drone company, scaled that up. I then moved to head of flight operations for a large defence and aerospace prime, and then joined the CAA about 2.5 years ago. Feels longer than that, but about 2.5 years ago. Initially in the policy team, and then a focus on leading our development to the certified category with lots of work around sort of ICAO. So atypical air environments, kind of where we are. Many of you would have been involved in the consultation response. I suspect you've read the proposed policy that went live about 6 or 7 weeks ago or so. The primary objective here is giving industry something that's tangible that they can begin to use to scale their operations today. If we look at the BV loss in non-segregated airspace, there's still significant, not just regulatory, but technological challenge we need to overcome collectively. Specifically around your cooperative detect and avoid, and that involves being in a volume of airspace where all air users are electronically conspicuous. There's challenges there, technological and regulatory. And then sort of the technological challenges of non-cooperative detect and avoid. So as we're working through them issues, what can we give industry today to begin moving in that direction of scaled, sustainable BV loss? And really what we need to ensure that we do collectively is reduce the mid-air collision risk to an acceptable level. There are certain volumes of airspace that due to their proximity to either linear infrastructure, so think power lines, railways or roads, are very close down to private property, you can reasonably anticipate there to be a reduced number of conventionally piloted aircraft. And we can use that assumption to reduce the mid-air collision risk to a sufficient level in the absence of cooperative or non-cooperative DAA to enable BV loss at scale outside of segregated airspace. So it's a program of work that we've been working on internally with lots of external support for about 18 months. That culminated in the 6-week public consultation that came to a close on the 2nd of April. 242 very detailed responses that we're currently working through. In terms of next steps, we're going through that feedback now. The intent is that we publish the policy. This isn't a 2025 thing. This is summer. That's our current intent. That sort of May, June, we get that policy formally adopted and out the door in the hands of operators, so you can begin to make use of it. So that's the update on Atypical. There is another sort of treat that I've come with hot off the press that we don't actually even have on the slide. That's kind of how much of a treat it is. And that's an announcement that early next week we'll be releasing a piece of policy that we've been working on in the rules of CAP 722 Golf, which provides guidance on permitting technical variation within an OSC without having to come back for a variation within your ops manual. So it's a piece of guidance going out. It provides, I think it's about 18 pages in total. It provides some high-level points to consider that, as I mentioned, will permit you as an operator to do technical variation within your operations without having to come back to us and do a renewal or a variation. Suspect I've raised some questions. That's it.
Done for now?
Yeah, that's me for now.
Okay.
Give boss the microphone.
I think I've noticed that Alex got a post on LinkedIn. Nice photograph. It makes me look taller than normal. Okay. Okay, we're getting towards the end and let's get to some questions. So this is what we've covered. I won't go through all of that. Unless it's helpful for prompting more questions, but I don't expect that there's going to be need for prompts. So the conclusion, I hope there, just to round off, and thanks Callum for that. And you know, the news about 722 Golf is addressing a problem that has been present for a while, and I'm really pleased and excited to be able to sort of share that with you today. And then for next week, obviously that will settle and hopefully provide and enable the industry in some small way to achieve its aims with less friction. An awful lot of what we do, I hope you will agree with what you've seen, is about removing frictions for people like yourselves. We appreciate that there is too often too much delay and maybe not enough objectivity with the way that the team handles your applications. I'm hoping that perhaps today, via this presentation and any answers I give to your questions now, I can perhaps give you some assurance that we're on a positive vector. I totally appreciate that this may sound like jam tomorrow, just like perhaps last year, but the difference is that program mindset. The difference is that the DISCO is an organised program with milestones that has been correctly financed. And that's one of the recognitions that I've had over the years within the ARPAS unit, is that change has to basically be financed properly. We do have the funding now. The team is expanding, and we've just finished one round of recruitment, and I expect there will be others to come this year. So if you fancy having a go, keep an eye out. And I think on that I'll close and perhaps get some questions.
Yeah, so in terms of questions, you can continue to log onto Slido and ask questions, and also like them so that we can get some ranking, because we've got a number of questions, and to spot the most desired ones. Do have a look and like those that you would like to ask. Actually, Jenny, the question with most likes is for you. How did you determine fair representation on the FIG? The direct doesn't really exist anymore. Why were certain companies included and trade associations elsewhere?
So as you can imagine, getting the membership right on the FIG was quite difficult. One of the things we were conscious of, that we wanted to go across the industry of future of flight, which is quite broad. And we wanted to have not too many voices in the room to just make sure that we could have a really useful discussion. The second part of that is recognising that we wanted to draw on trade associations as much as possible for this first part, and use sub-working groups as needed. Now, one of the things also, we do an annual refresh of the membership, which we're going through that process now, to make sure now we're in that delivery that we've got it right. Do we need better? And one of the questions that is coming up, do we need a different approach to drone operations or drone representation? That is definitely one of the things that has come up. But I'd say overall, we came over who are the ones that are proximate to doing things, and where can we use people who can represent a whole community's worth of views, is how we kind of generated the membership. But now we are going through that refresh and drawing on expertise of the people who are already there and our contacts that we've developed as a year to make sure that we've got that right. But the FIG is not the only thing, and it won't be the only thing that is the way to communicate through the Expo and all the other things. Yeah, there's lots of other forums. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
And I hope that Graham and my humble self did a good work in terms of representing the industry, the US, into the activities. Thanks. I think the next question is actually on atypical air environment, understanding the rationale for the numbers there. So you're in the process of reviewing the responses. You may not have seen ours. It's actually not my question, but I have a similar one. We recommended a higher number actually for practical reasons, because 15 meters is really low. So the question is, what was the rationale for your proposal at 15 meters? Any reason why we can go beyond?
Yeah, good question, and one that we've received throughout the past 18 months piece of development. There's some important sort of recognitions to make, specifically around certain exemptions within the UK around the standardised European rules of the air, which for all intents and purposes permit a whole host of other conventionally piloted air traffic to operate not just close to, but within the definition that we've proposed of atypical air environments. I think the important takeaway is this is a dynamic piece of policy, and just because we have those distances recommended today doesn't necessarily that they can't move in the future. One of the things we're going to be doing as operators begin to make use of the atypical policy is integrate it into our test and intelligence function that sits under Atypical to continuously review the data that's being created as a result of these operations and use that to determine whether or not these distances can be flexed. Do you need to employ, greater use of electronic conspicuity? Do you need to have stronger, more robust technical containment solutions if we want to flex those distances? Fundamentally, it comes down to the UK regulatory rule set and the exemptions we have in SARA, and the fact that you can have a whole host of other air users within our proposal of atypical. The other important reflection to take is we haven't strictly defined what constitutes an atypical air environment. We've provided guidance in that policy of what might be reasonably anticipated of being considered an atypical air environment. And if as an operator, you can provide rationale as to why you think the distance should be increased, even after day one of publication of the policy, then it will be assessed on its own merits. So if you do ask for greater distances, that will still be assessed. You've just got to provide a rationale as to how you think the risk is adequately mitigated.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up. My personal question is on standardization, because then it's case by case, OSCs, so learning as we go. What is your timeline for transforming that approach into whatever you call it, a SORA, generic, or PDRA? What do you think?
Yes, so we all know SORA RK under the ARPAS model, and that is essentially atypical. And at that point, we would want a generalized definition of what is routinely considered atypical. We've talked about the adoption of SORA into AMC around September time this year, and the full adoption into the DISCO product in 2025. So at that point, I think there's always going to be a degree of subjectivity as it comes to atypical. It's not a classification of airspace. It's a generalized recognition that you've got this reduced volume of other air traffic within certain areas. And what would constitute atypical where we're stood today, from a distance point of view, might not be what's constituted atypical in another location, but similarly close to a building. So we want to move towards more generalized definition of what would constitute atypical. At the moment, we need to see the data. We've got a plan internally to work with operators to begin making use of it, to feed off their data sets to determine whether or not we can either flex the distances and actually get a little bit more of a rigid definition around what constitutes atypical. I'm going to hate myself for saying this. It's a journey. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Rupert.
So, Callum, thank you for your explanation and so on. Can I just confirm then that your intention at the moment is to publish in this summer, June, July, and no further consultation is required? Because I thought at the beginning of the process, there was a timeline of a second consultation coming through that was broader.
Yes, so as it pertains to atypical, there is no current and planned further consultation. This policy will be published because it is groundbreaking in terms of what we will be enabling. There will be a continuous review process. We will be building requirements into operational authorizations around sharing data with us so we can determine kind of its safety moving forward. But in terms of any further consultation specifically on atypical, there is no plan currently to do that.
Thank you. So perhaps just a supplementary, when can you apply?
Well, fundamentally, it's a piece of guidance as to a strategic mitigation, and in making a safety case, an operator might make hundreds of technical, strategic, and operational mitigations, and atypical is simply one strategic mitigation. We have operators today that make the atypical argument. It's just not bound within the atypical name. It's just not called it. We're operating very close to this, and we think there's a reduced number of other air users. Therefore, we think we've managed the MAC risk. There's operators with provisions similar to that today. What this policy is about is, first of all, providing generalized guidance to industry, but also providing our inspectorate that are going to be assessing these applications with guidance and awareness that they're going to be getting these types of applications through the door. So it's already here.
Thank you.
Any more? Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick one. It's on people and skills. Jenny, it's probably for you, but you probably need to ask someone else. And people and skills, we need to be sort of getting the universities to do more, I don't know, aerospace engineering, computer vision, materials for the batteries and all the rest of it. Is there any way you can persuade, academia to start, because we need to start running those courses up and getting the people together now? Because it's going to take 3-5 years to spit those people out that we are going to need.
I was going to say, that's exactly one of the things we're trying to do within the education strategy piece. There's already the guy I know who's involved with is Professor Sir Ian Gray out of Cranfield. There's about 12 universities who collaborate on various things, and they're an aerospace sort of hub. He's already agreed with, there's a guy over there called Dave Godber. We're trying to pull that strategy together, and he's agreed to sort of host the first meeting as a discussion point. What can we achieve? There's quite a lot of work going on in the battery space, mainly aimed at the bigger craft, so it's less of a day-to-day interest for us. But absolutely, I mean, the intent of that education strategy is to have drone content of whatever sort and whatever depth in every school, college, university, going forwards, because that's the only real way that we will get the whole of the UK drone positive over the next 5 years. Does that answer? And now, if you've got something specific, please grab me, because
Government lever.
and we just need to add you to the working group if you've got an interest. Sorry, Jenny.
No, it's great to hear from all the stuff that you're doing, but no, you're right. It does need to do all of those levels of things. Obviously, we do need to work with the Department for Education. We do have several kind of aviation-wide schemes, like Generation for Aviation, where they're funded to support things that we see, and they can have an element of RPAS. There isn't one we currently do that is just specific to RPAS operation, but it's definitely something in the future could be. At the moment, we tackle it by saying, increasing area, and also these are the careers, going out, doing the outreach publics, highlighting what kind of certain industries do as well. And we talked about the apprenticeship schemes as well, but several airports, for example, already have these types of things. But as the industry grows, we need to start kind of maybe having a more specialised stream. But yeah, one for us to come back to as well, though. So watch the space.
Keep the mic, because the next question is actually for you. There may be a change of government. Do you think that may have an impact in terms of the future flight being a government priority? Do you have any insights?
As a good civil servant, obviously, I can't really answer that question. But as on a more useful note, if we're selling that story in the sense of this is saving money for taxpayers, it's bringing benefits to society, it's delivering environmental benefits, who would want to argue with something like that?
So it's up to us to deliver our user cases. We have plenty of questions, and actually we'll share them with the speakers to take them afterwards offline. There is one that came back during the break as well. UK SORA versus EU SORA. Do you have any insight on what could be the differences? And why there would be differences, I guess, is also behind.
Well, I mean, Callum, thank you for the question, by the way. It's a good one. And we are working hard at drafting up the UK version of the SORA, because it does need to be adapted to the UK. And I think probably the one, I don't know the entire list, but one of the things that's probably worth mentioning is the thing that Callum's already mentioned about some of the UK specificities. So, for example, the existing exemption from SERA for aircraft to fly below 500 feet across the UK is a difference between the UK and the rest of Europe. So that's the kind of thing that we need to integrate into that. Some of the other things, I suppose, just thinking off the top of my head, would be making sure that the output of the regulatory review and the direction of travel that is going on dovetails in with the way that the SORA is adapted for the UK. But in big handfuls, the approach, the meat and two veg of the SORA is not going to be upended in a UK version. It's going to remain fairly consistent and coherent with what goes on in Europe, because we're very mindful that despite Brexit, we haven't moved any further away from the continent geographically. So it makes sense to have something which is not too divergent from what what our friends are doing in Europe. And I see a hand has gone up. Let's see if there's a follow. Is it your question? All right. Okay.
It's just more about, okay, so if an operator's got EU SORA and then they're having to adapt to SORA, yeah, I'm just wondering about the interface. You suddenly start to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think perhaps actually it leads on to a slightly different answer, in the sense that a conversation I was having only yesterday was about, what sort of things can we recognise, across international borders, and what should we be prioritising in terms of recognition for existing certificates and whatever we might be talking about, and perhaps a SORA-based OSC from Europe may be one of those. And, you know, without any commitment or prejudice at this stage, I would say that we would like to move towards, you know, minimising the wrinkles that anyone would need to step across if they've got an existing authorisation from a European country. But I'll stop speaking now in case I'm saying too much. Callum, anything to add to that?
Maybe a really small build on recognising there's a difference between alignment and validation. So they're two different things. So we could go down a pathway of really strong alignment, recognising that might not be the best fit for the UK idiosyncrasies. Or we can look at doing a piece of work of recognition and validation of another NAA safety case. So they're two different things. We can have the best of both worlds. We can have our own UK specific, and SORA is built to be NAA specific. Canada have adopted SORA, China have adopted SORA, and none of them are the same process of the EASA adopted version of SORA. SORA is meant to be flexible to meet the idiosyncrasies of the specific airspace and ground area that you're operating within. So you know, rather than strict alignment, I think that the direction that we're heading in is more around validation of another NAA's SORA, and then we get best of both worlds.
Right, I think in the interest of time, we will thank our speakers.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd just like to say there was a point came up earlier about technology and regulatory issues. I'd like to add the third one there, which is political, because we all know that some things have been delayed in the past, you know, for instance, electronic conspicuity and disagreements between the commercial world and the sport and recreational world. Those conversations will continue and hopefully sense will prevail. I don't know quite what sense looks like at the moment, but hopefully sense will prevail. My sort of takeaway from that was, you know, we argued about some of the dates, you know, where the heck did 2026 go? So it goes 2025, 2027, and nothing's in the middle. We argued about all of those things for a year. But the one thing I would say is, for the first time, what you've just heard is we've got a plan. The DFT and the CAA, to me, look like they're on the same page. And part of the next activity for the FIG is a governance stream, which will be trying to assess progress against, and I think it was a 19-page spreadsheet that Hugh talked about having as the, have I understated that, Hugh? But it's a massive, you know, there's a lot of activity in there, and the key piece is now, how do we measure that? How do we report on progress, and how do we drive it forward? So I'd like, again, put your hands together before you get a cup of tea or coffee for our speakers, Jenny, Kev, and Callum. Thank you.